Make that big boss less special. It ain't no game, but they saying welcome to the second level. Second level. Second level gaming. Second level.
Developer Frame Interactive's last outing was the massively underrated indie VR gem, Headmaster. This time around, they are co-developing and publishing a psychological horror outing with accomplished indie devs Robot Invader. Developer Ben Throop from Frame Interactive said he wanted to create something a little different than the pure, terrifying, in-your-face horror that most of the current crop of horror VR titles serve up, by swinging closer to the psychological aspect of a horror title, ramping up the tension and creep factor, rather than the in-your-face blood and gore of, say, a Resident Evil or a Killing Floor. To go along with that, they wanted to add a dash of mystery too. So what we end up with is a psychological murder mystery horror title with indie aesthetics and the creep factor turned all the way up to 11. But is it any good? Short answer, yeah. Long answer, well, keep watching. The thing about Dead Secret that lets it down a tiny bit is simply that the most current second-generation VR titles have a fuck ton of polish to them. Gorgeous graphics, smart movement mechanics, little details that go a long way. Dead Secret has none of those. At all. The graphics are okay, but nothing dazzling. It lacks sheen and is frankly a little bland in most places. I think the very first inkling I had that this was perhaps going to be a little on the janky side was right at the very beginning on the menu screen. I guess the camera was yet to calibrate, so I was simply staring at what I assumed was the figure of a human, bent over backwards with a broken-looking neck and no head. It took me a moment to realize that this wasn't part of the horror, although I honestly couldn't judge you for thinking that it was. Puzzles are interesting, but a little on the easy side, mostly because of the lack of detail in the environment. It would be impossible to not find all the puzzle pieces if you spend any significant amount of time in each room. The movement options are supremely limited. Single degree base turning and utilizing your head as a cursor, you simply click on things to walk towards them, but you can only do that to the designated part of the environment that have been deemed walk-toable. I played with all the comfort settings off and was still a little frustrated with the lack of freedom. And the sound. Oh, the sound. Eerie music is fine, effects are okay, what really kills it is the voiceover, which, I kid you not, sounds far inferior to the voiceover you are listening to right now. I'm not sure where or how it was recorded, but there is zero emotion in the protagonist's vocal stylings, and the volume is all over the damn place. It was definitely off-putting every time it cut to any of the story segments, and I had to grin and bear audio quality roughly equivalent to my homemade radio show cassette tapes from the 90s. Don't lie, we all did it.
Bill told me to cover Bullard's death, but he's just looking for gossip about the young assistant. But I took it seriously, did the research, followed every lead, like a real journalist would. It paid off. I found something everybody else missed. A note, a half-thought, scribbled in the margins of the coroner's draft report. It read, "Hypothermia in summer?"
Now I realize I'm being a little harsh here. However, I do it with love. I actually really enjoyed the game. I know it doesn't seem like it by the comments so far, but bear with me. Here's what Dead Secret does really well. Creep factor. Man, is this game creepy. The overarching storyline of the murder mystery is peppered with moments of sheer psychological terror, namely by the introduction of an antagonist by the name of the Woodcutter. to explain the scares, I'll have to explain the story a touch. So here goes. No spoilers, I promise. You are a journalist investigating the death of a scientist at his now abandoned home. There are multiple suspects that may have potentially been the killer. Your job is to find out which one did it. The line of research your subject was in is essentially a pseudoscience. He was focusing on the ability for humans to tap into their subconscious mind in order to gain the equivalent of a superpower. This manifests itself in-game as a prototype set of goggles. These goggles allow you to tap into your inner self and see things that you wouldn't normally know were there. I guess I'll leave the rest up to your imagination. Needless to say, this leads to some hair-raising moments as you pop the goggles on, only to see some demon-headed specter with its neck twisted like the baby in Trainspotting. Fans of Monkey Shines will also get a kick out of one of the game's little recurring characters. The horror elements are perfectly paced and done splendidly well. The puzzles are also intriguing despite the difficulty level. Frankly, I like my puzzles to not be too difficult anyway, because otherwise I get frustrated rather fast. They do ramp up nicely though towards the end. The story is pretty damn good too. In a very unlike me twist, I found myself reading every little scrap of paper in its entirety, which is good because occasionally the game will test your knowledge. As you start to uncover more about the woodcutter and the research in general, you find the hooks really sinking in. The desire to persist grows stronger, and the game ends up holding its own. I genuinely believe the story, puzzles, and scares override the slight jank factor, and when you factor in the low price, it becomes a worthwhile title to explore. If you've been gorging yourself on premium games recently, don't be surprised if you're initially a little let down. However, if The Invisible Hours crossed with a Japanese horror movie sounds like a good time to you, do consider picking it up. Thanks for watching.
It ain't no game, but they saying welcome to the second level.